My father looked me dead in the eyes and told me I was no longer his daughter. Not in anger. Not in the middle of a fight. Calmly. Deliberately. The way someone speaks when they've already made peace with a decision. I was 8 weeks pregnant. My fiancé had been buried 4 months earlier. That night, I slept in my car, in a grocery store parking lot outside Savannah, Georgia. 6 years of military service behind me. 7 months of pregnancy ahead of me. And nowhere to go. 48 hours later, an unknown number called. A lawyer told me my grandfather had left me his entire estate. $40 million. One condition. And what I found inside that mountain house didn't just change my life. It exposed everything my father had spent 20 years trying to hide. My name is Sarah. And this is the story of how the man who raised me lost a daughter, and everything that came with her. My father, Richard Cole, was the kind of man people respected without question. A decorated Army veteran. Community figure. Sunday church. Strong handshake. When neighbors said, "Richard, your daughter's serving too," he stood a little taller. But that pride wasn't about me. It was about him. I was a trophy he showed at cookouts. Not a person he actually knew. My brother Marcus was different, at least in my father's eyes. Every failed business, every collapsed relationship, every unpaid loan, somehow my father always had the money, the time, the patience. For me? He never once asked if I was okay. I served 6 years in the Army. Bought my own car. Paid my own bills. When my father's roof needed replacing, I wrote half the check without being asked. When Marcus started yet another venture, Dad called me, "Your brother's struggling, Sarah." As if that made it my problem. As if it always had been. Then came Daniel. Daniel Hayes. Air Force captain. Quiet. Steady. The kind of man who listened more than he talked. We met at a USO event in 2019 and spent 2 years building something real, no games, no drama, just 2 people who understood exactly what service meant. We were supposed to get married in the spring. Then a training exercise went wrong. His aircraft went down. 3 people didn't come home that day. Daniel was one of them. I spent the months after his funeral running on routine. Wake up. Work. Sleep. Repeat. The structure of military life was the only thing that kept me moving when my emotions completely stopped working. Then, 7 months after his funeral, I took a pregnancy test. Positive. I took 2 more. Both positive. I sat on the bathroom floor for a full hour. Not because I was devastated. Because I didn't know how to hold grief and joy at the same time. Before his last deployment, Daniel and I had frozen embryos. He said, "Whatever happens to me, a piece of me stays with you." He kept that promise. That thought made me cry harder than I had at his funeral. My father was the first person I wanted to tell. Looking back, I don't fully understand why. Maybe some part of me still believed he was capable of showing up. 2 days later, I drove to his house. The same kitchen where my mother used to bake on Sunday mornings. The same table where Daniel had sat the first time he came to dinner. Dad was drinking coffee. Marcus was there too, he was always there. I sat down. My heart was pounding. "Dad. I'm pregnant." 1 beat of silence. Marcus looked up, surprised. My father's face changed. Not surprise. Not concern. Something colder. Something final. "Whose is it?" "Daniel's." He had embryos frozen before his last deployment. We planned for this possibility. He set his coffee mug down. Slowly. Deliberately. Then he stood up. "I won't accept this baby." I thought I'd heard wrong. "What?" "I won't accept this baby, Sarah." The room went very small, very fast. Dad, Daniel was a decorated officer. He served this country. I don't care. 2 words. Like a door slamming. You want to raise a dead man's child? You've lost your mind. I looked at Marcus. He was staring at the floor. Same as always. Silent. Absent. My father pointed toward the door. Go. I didn't move. Are you serious right now? I have never been more serious. Then, the sentence that closed every door between us permanently. If you keep this baby, don't come back to this house. I waited. Part of me still expected him to take it back. To say, wait, I didn't mean that. He didn't. Marcus didn't look up. I left. That night, I parked in a grocery store lot and sat in the dark. Watched strangers push carts under fluorescent lights. Life going on, completely indifferent to mine. Around midnight, I played Daniel's last voicemail. Once. Twice. 5 times. Then I let myself fall completely apart. The kind of cry that doesn't have a bottom. The next afternoon, I was sitting in my car outside a diner. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Sarah Cole? Yes. My name is Gordon Reeves. I'm the estate attorney for your grandfather, General Harold Cole. I sat up straight. What about him? He paused. Then said the words that rearranged everything. Miss Cole, your grandfather has left his entire estate to you. My heart stopped. How much? $40 million. Every cent, solely to you. Outside, cars were passing. A delivery driver was unloading boxes. The world was just continuing. And somewhere inside it, $40 million had just landed in my life. But that wasn't even what stunned me most. What stunned me was this: my grandfather had left everything to me. Not my father. Not Marcus. Me. Is there a condition? Yes, one. Gordon explained. My grandfather owned a home in Asheville, North Carolina, up in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I had to live there for 60 consecutive days. During that time, I had to read every letter, journal, and document he'd left behind, every single one. And provide written acknowledgement to his attorneys after each one. If you abandon the condition at any point, the estate transfers automatically to a military orphan fund. I didn't hesitate for 1 second. I'll do it. 3 days later, I was on the road to Asheville. I didn't know what I was driving toward. But I knew I was driving away from the right things. The house was exactly as I remembered it. Stone walls. Tall oak trees. A porch that looked straight into the mountains. Every summer of my childhood had happened here. The caretaker, Margaret, a woman in her late 60s with silver hair and quiet eyes, had kept it exactly as my grandfather left it. She hugged me before she said a word. Then she held my face and said, "Sweet girl." A stranger showed me more warmth in 10 seconds than my father had in the last 10 years. Margaret handed me a brass key. He left specific instructions that this room was yours to open. The study door swung open, tall ceilings, shelves lined floor to ceiling with books, military photographs, old maps, commendations, letters pinned and framed. Decades of a life, organized with military precision. On the desk sat a wooden box. One word carved into the lid: Sarah. Inside were dozens of sealed envelopes, arranged by date. Journals. Financial records. Legal files. Photographs. And a single handwritten note on top.
I recognized his handwriting immediately. Bold. Clean. Exact. The note said only. Start from the beginning. So I did. The early letters were warm. Memories of my grandmother. Life lessons from the army. Advice about character, patience, what it means to lead. Second letter. Third. Fourth. Still warm, but the dates were getting closer to the present. And the handwriting was getting sharper. Then halfway through a journal dated 6 years ago, I turned a page and stopped. Frank withdrew another $40,000 today. Claims it's temporary. It isn't. Frank. My father's name. I read it again. Then a third time. 4 years ago, Marcus had started a landscaping company. I'd assumed investors had backed it. The company folded in 7 months. I had never once asked where the startup money came from. My grandfather knew exactly where it came from. And the further I read, the worse it got. 60,000 here. 30,000 there. A property refinanced. A trust account drained. Loans that were never loans. Investments that never existed. Across more than a decade, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Flowing from my grandfather's estate, through my father, directly to Marcus. One journal entry stopped me cold. The grief isn't the money. The grief is the trust. I gave him opportunity after opportunity to be honest. To stop. I asked. I waited. He chose differently every time. I set the journal down and stared out at the mountains for a long time.
Then I opened the sealed envelope at the bottom of the box. The one labeled, "For Sarah only." Inside were bank statements. Property transfer documents. Tax filings. All organized. All verified. All with documentation. Years of careful, deliberate record keeping. And on top of everything, one yellow sticky note. Facts matter more than feelings. Always. Grandpa. I laughed out loud, alone in that study, at midnight. Because it sounded exactly like him. I read until 3 a.m. Then sat back in his chair, and closed my eyes. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. To Marcus. Through my father. 4 years. When the money ran out, assets went. When those went, new debt came. When new debt came, someone else paid. Sometimes that someone else was me. And that realization, that was the one that hollowed me out completely. Not because of the money. Because I had trusted him. 2 days later, his car pulled into the driveway. Marcus was with him. That single detail told me everything before they even knocked. You don't bring Marcus to a reconciliation. You bring Marcus when you think there's something to negotiate. I watched from the study window. Margaret appeared in the hallway. Should I stay? No. Thank you. I've got it. 3 heavy knocks at the door. My father's knock, like every door, already belonged to him. I opened it. A few seconds of silence. The last time we'd been in the same space, he'd pointed me toward the door. Now he was standing on my grandfather's porch. Sarah. His voice was softer than I remembered. Dad. Marcus gave an awkward nod. I returned it. They came in. My father began surveying the room. Not the way grieving family members revisit memories. The way someone assesses property. We sat in the living room. Silence settled. Then he cleared his throat. I made mistakes. Opening move. Simple. Controlled. Carefully rehearsed. When you told me about the baby, I didn't react well. Didn't react well. Interesting choice of words. Like he'd forgotten my coffee order, not rejected his own grandchild. I was emotional. I said nothing. You know how much your mother meant to me. I almost admired the tactic. He wasn't talking about his actions. He was talking about his pain. Redirecting sympathy toward himself. I'd seen him use this move my entire life. I recognized it now, because my grandfather had documented it. What do you want, Dad? The question landed harder than I intended. His eyes narrowed slightly. Then relaxed. We're family, Sarah. There it was. The word that appeared every single time money entered a conversation. Marcus spoke up, you don't have to be hostile. I turned to look at him for the first time since they'd arrived. Hostile? You stood there while he threw me out. Silence. He looked away. Exactly like before. My father stepped in quickly. We're not here to discuss that. Of course not. Because discussing that would require accountability. We're here to discuss your grandfather's estate. And there it was. Finally. The truth. Not me. Not the baby. Not the relationship. The money. $40 million is an enormous responsibility, Sarah. Maybe this situation should be approached as a family. I reached over to the side table. Picked up the sealed envelope labeled for Sarah only. Slid it across the coffee table. He picked it up. Opened it. I watched the color leave his face. Not in a rush, slowly. The way understanding arrives when you've been lying to yourself for a very long time. He looked up. Where did you get this? Grandpa left it for me. Sarah. He knew, Dad. He always knew. The silence that followed was the longest of the afternoon. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Smaller. He asked if I was going to involve lawyers. Grandpa already did. That was the last real sentence of the visit. He and Marcus drove back the same night. I stood on the porch and watched their headlights disappear into the mountain dark. Gordon called the next morning. Sarah, your father filed a legal challenge. I wasn't surprised. The visit, the apology, the family speech, all of it had been theater. The filing had already been prepared before he walked through that door. Their argument, my grandfather's final decisions were inconsistent with prior plans. That the estate distribution was unreasonable. That General Harold Cole, 40 years commanding soldiers, managing multi-million-dollar operations, making life-and-death decisions, somehow hadn't understood his own will. The argument was insulting. But it was also dangerous. Then Gordon said, "There's something else." A recording. A recording of what? Your grandfather made a private recording several years ago. A conversation with your father. It was sealed under specific instructions, not to be opened until a legal challenge was filed. I felt something cold move through me. Because I understood immediately. My grandfather hadn't just left evidence. He had anticipated this exact moment. The hearing was on a Tuesday morning in Charlotte. I was 5 months pregnant by then. My father was already in the courtroom when I arrived. Marcus too. Neither acknowledged me. The judge, a woman in her 60s, sharp-eyed and efficient, had the look of someone who had heard every family argument imaginable. My father's attorney went first. The words were polished. Professional. Even persuasive, if you knew nothing about my family. Then Gordon stood up. And facts don't shout. They don't perform. They simply exist. Document after document entered the record. Bank statements. Property transfers. Trust revisions. Journals. Years of evidence. Years of observations. Years of deliberate concern. My grandfather hadn't acted impulsively. He had acted carefully, methodically, over years. Then came the recording. The courtroom went noticeably quiet. Even my father shifted in his chair. The audio wasn't perfect, it had been recorded years earlier. But every word was clear. My grandfather's voice came first. Older. Slower. But unmistakably firm. Then my father's voice. Dad, Marcus needs the money. Grandpa, Marcus needs accountability. A long pause. Then my father said the sentence that seemed to pull all the air out of the room. Sarah can take care of herself. I felt something twist deep in my chest. Not because I hadn't known it. Because now it was permanent. Recorded. Real. The recording continued. My grandfather's voice, calm, measured, deeply disappointed. One day you'll lose the only child who truly loves you. Silence followed. Long enough to become uncomfortable. Long enough to become truth. Nobody in the courtroom spoke for a long moment. Not the attorneys. Not the judge. My father stared at the table. For the first time all morning, he looked old. Not physically, emotionally. Like a man finally confronted by every choice he'd spent years avoiding. The judge ruled before the end of the afternoon. Challenge denied. Completely. The estate remained exactly as my grandfather intended. $40 million, entirely mine. It should have felt overwhelming. Victorious. Life-changing. Instead I felt quiet. Because somewhere along the way, the money had stopped being the point. The truth had become the point. And the truth was now public. Official. Permanent. Gordon handed me an envelope as people gathered their things. I recognized the handwriting before I even fully looked at it. This was to be opened after the hearing, whatever the outcome. My hands were trembling slightly as I broke the seal. The room faded. The noise disappeared. For a moment, it was just the two of us again. Sarah. If you are reading this, then you finished what I asked of you. More importantly, you finished it honestly. Money can be inherited. Character cannot. Your father inherited my name. You inherited my trust. Never confuse the two. I read those last 3 lines twice. Then a third time. Because those words explained everything: the inheritance, the condition, the journals, the sealed letters, the recording. My grandfather hadn't been protecting money. He had been protecting values. The ones he believed would survive him. By the time I looked up, my vision had blurred. I sat there alone in that emptying courtroom, holding his letter, missing him. Loving him. Thanking him. When I finally walked outside, the afternoon sun had broken through the clouds. My father was standing alone on the courthouse steps. Marcus was gone. The attorneys were gone. Just us. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Then he looked at me. Not angry. Not calculating. Just tired. Sarah. I waited. I made mistakes. The sentence came years too late. But it came. I want another chance. I looked at him carefully. The man who raised me. The man who failed me. Both things true at the same time. I thought about my daughter. About the family I intended to build. About what I was willing to carry into it. You rejected her before she was even born. Tears appeared in his eyes. Grandpa never did. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then I turned and walked away. Not because I hated him. Because some journeys only move forward. My daughter was born on a warm July morning. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. Bright eyes. Strong lungs. Perfect. I named her Charlotte. Not after a family member. Not after a tradition. Simply because Daniel told me once that he loved that name. The inheritance changed our lives, of course it did. Pretending otherwise would be dishonest. But the greatest thing my grandfather left me wasn't financial. It was clarity. The ability to see people as they truly are, and to understand your own worth, completely independent of their opinion of you. Today, Charlotte is sleeping down the hall as I tell you this story. Sometimes I watch her and think about everything that had to happen for us to arrive here. A mountain house. A box of letters. A courtroom. A grandfather who believed in me. And a father who, without ever meaning to, taught me the most important lesson of my life. The people who underestimate your value are often the people most afraid of discovering it. If this story touched you in some way, I'd genuinely love to hear from you in the comments. Has someone in your life ever underestimated you, and then had to watch you prove them wrong? Or maybe the opposite, have you ever been the one who misjudged someone you loved? No judgment here. Just real conversations. Drop your city in the comments too. I love knowing where people are listening from. Stories connect us in ways we rarely expect. And if you enjoy emotional family dramas like this one, subscribe and come back every week. New story every Tuesday. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And take care of the people who actually deserve it.